Hi, I'm John Little, and this is the Shockcast for Saturday, August 18th, 2018. The Four Horsemen and the Grand Solar Minimum. For 2,000 years, we have been pondering the Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse. They have captured our imaginations and our fears. When a new would-be emperor arose, we wondered if he was the guy on the white horse. When internal conflict arose, we thought of the red horseman. Scarcity and famine made us think of the black horse, and when epidemics ripped through our world, we thought of the pale horse. But for 2,000 years, we've been consistently wrong. So when do they ride? I had reason to think about this over the past week, since the sun might be ready to throw our civilization into chaos. It has been 4 years since I wrote on the topic of the Four Horsemen, and I think that it might be time to bring them to our attention again. Why? Well, solar output from our sun goes on a 400-year major cycle and a 200-year minor cycle, and it appears that we might be on the downslope into the cooling phase of that 400-year cycle. We call this the Grand Solar Minimum, or GSM. And we had a really bad one of those 400 years ago, called the Maunder Minimum. You can see Martin Armstrong, who wrote about the dramatic effects of the Maunder Minimum at the link I provided in my article. But let me steal a bit from that article and quote him here. Quote, "The Maunder Minimum created such a deep cold in Europe and extreme weather events elsewhere that what unfolds is a series of droughts, floods, and harvest failures. Historically, this leads to massive migrations, wars, and revolutions. The fatal synergy between the human and natural disasters indicated perhaps one-third of the human population, eradicated perhaps one-third of the human population during the last event, and this time we are crashing more rapidly before. Therefore, we may exceed more than a reduction in population of one-third and reach the levels of 14th century of 50%, which was also combined with the Black Plague. What took place during the 17th century suggests that altered weather conditions can have catastrophic political and social consequences. Political systems are already in crash mode with Big Bang, meaning his Big Bang for the economic confidence model. Add to this the crisis we see in weather cycles, and the world will be augmented by unpredictable crises involving water, food, energy supply chains, and public health. States will unquestionably collapse as famine could overtake large populations, and flood or disease could cross borders and lead to internal instability or international conflict." Going on to the second quoted paragraph, this is long. Quote, "There were three primary factors at work globally during the 17th century that combined to produce chaos. There were increases in volcanic eruptions, twice as many El Niño episodes, unusually warm ocean conditions along the tropical west coast of South America, and virtual disappearance of sunspots, reducing solar output to warm the Earth. These three forces combined are acknowledged by real Earth science." Then a next paragraph. "The 17th century was a proliferation of wars, civil wars, rebellions, and more cases of state breakdown around the globe than any previous or subsequent age. This was the petri dish that brewed the revolution against the monarchy that would give birth to the American and French revolutions. In the year 1648, rebellions paralyzed both Russia, the largest state in the world, and France, the most populous state in Europe. Civil wars broke out in Ukraine, England, and Scotland, and irate subjects in Istanbul, Europe's largest city, strangled Sultan Ibrahim." Close quote. And then later in his article, he says this, and it should send chills down your spine. Quote, "In the 17th century, the fatal synergy of weather, wars, and rebellions killed millions, amounting to 1/3 of the population. A natural catastrophe of analogous proportions today would kill billions. It would also produce dislocation and violence and compromise international security. Sustainability and cooperation would also be compromised. Country borders would or will likely change or vanish altogether. This is part of our forecast on why the USA will break up after 2032 or almost 2033. Close quote. When I wrote my article on the Four Horsemen 4 years ago, I did not really understand the implications of this grand solar minimum. I didn't really even know that much about it. I only really mentioned it a couple years ago. But we might be about to see direct evidence of this grand solar minimum this winter, and especially the one after. Think about the implications of what Martin Armstrong said. The grand solar minimum will definitely set the stage for what is described in Revelation 6. In fact, you should read it again. And I will read for you the first part of Revelation 6, the important parts that you need to pay attention to, starting with verse 1. Quote, "And I saw when the Lamb opened one of the seals, and I heard, as it were, the noise of thunder, one of the four beasts saying, 'Come and see.' And I saw, and behold, a white horse, and he that sat on him had a bow, and a crown was given unto him, and he went forth conquering and to conquer." And then verse 3, "And when he had opened the second seal, I heard the second beast say, 'Come and see.' And there went out another horse that was red, and power was given to him, and that sat thereon to take peace from the earth, and that they should kill one another. And there was given unto him a great sword." And then verse 5, "And when he had opened the third seal, I heard the third beast say, 'Come and see.' And I beheld, and lo, a black horse, and he that sat on him had a pair of balances in his hand." Verse 6, "And I heard a voice in the midst of the four beasts say, A measure of wheat for a penny, and 3 measures of barley for a penny, and see thou hurt not the oil and the wine." And then verse 7, "And when he had opened the fourth seal, I heard the voice of the fourth beast say, 'Come and see.' And I looked, and behold, a pale horse, and his name that sat on him was Death, and hell followed with him. And power was given unto them over the fourth part of the earth to kill with the sword, and with hunger, and with death, and with the beasts of the earth." Revelation 6, verses 1 through 8. Right at the time when peak oil will make itself felt, this grand solar minimum will also occur. At the same time, we will suffer the worst financial crash in the history of the world, even while societal conflict will be at its highest in centuries. Does that sound like the kind of conditions for the Four Horsemen to ride? Yeah, it certainly does to me, and let's not forget that Ezekiel's fire will be coming right about the same time. Please prepare for the worst moment in history since the Great Flood. And then, when the Antichrist comes, it will get even worse. Will you be ready for this? Now we get to the next important part of the Shockcast, the news and analysis from this past week. But before going on, take a moment to click the subscribe button below, and hit the bell to be notified when the next Shockcast happens. Those of you listening via MP3, make sure that you are subscribed to the Shock Letter at theshockletter.com. And there's an important reason to be subscribed to the Shock Letter, since I usually do not have the time to talk about more than just a fraction of the news that I analyze here on the Shockcast. So subscribe to the Shock Letter and get all of the news and links that I analyze for free. In fact, everyone should sign up for the Shock Letter. Subscribing and unsubscribing is easy, and there's no way that I would ever share the subscription list with anyone. Period. I'm not in this for the money, and never will be. In fact, for years, since 2011, for about 7 years, I have been doing all of this for free. I'm not doing this for the money. Now, moving into the analysis, and we start with a link from a Turkish newspaper submitted by Chris in the comments section. And I had to hold my nose a bit just to read it. It's titled, in a flamboyant jingoistic style, "Mobilize in your field, grab your gun or pin, clench your fists, get ready, a glorious struggle is starting." Written by Ibrahim Karagul. Of all the threats that face us right now, Gog and Magog is the greatest. It took me a while to figure this out, and the result was Ezekiel's Fire at ezekielsfire.com. So as we watch what Turkey is doing, you need to know that the most earth-shaking event in almost 2,000 years is closer than ever. I can't say when this will happen, other than way too soon. And the Turks have a bloodthirsty culture that resonates with the call to empire. They want to resurrect the Ottoman Empire so bad, well, it would be far too sedate to claim that it has gripped the consciousness of Turkey. I think that it has done more than that. It has set fire to a quintessential madness that is all too Turkish. I say quintessential since I have not found anything quite like the Turks. The Arabs are emotional and have their own fantastic madness all their own. But there's almost a childlike quality to the insanity that afflicts the Arabs. With the Turks, there's an oppressive darkness that is hard to describe in words. I can only say that Turkey is the only country that I have traveled to, and I have traveled to many countries, in some of them Arab, that I have been so utterly repulsed by. I've never been so repulsed by a country than Turkey. I've been to a lot of places in the world, but I have yet to experience the same kind of darkness that I have felt in Turkey, and I believe it to be the taint of genocide. Remember that more than 2 million Christians were murdered by the Turks, and it is a genocide that they refuse to acknowledge and apologize for. And they have made their refusal to acknowledge these murders, well, they've made it a part of their social identity. The blood of more than 2 million Greek, Armenian, and Assyrian Christians cries out from the ground where they were slaughtered. The price for that blood was never paid, and the bill is long past due. And I believe that Gog and Magog will be a part of the payment for this great evil. Chris shared this link in the comments section from last week's article, and I must admire the strength of his stomach. I'm not sure that I could read very much of Ibrahim Karagul's writing without throwing up. And the newspaper that he writes for, Yeni Safak, is very, very close to the Turkish government. Anything that appears in Yeni Safak is as if it were spoken by Oink Erdogan himself. So I guess that I'm glad that someone is strong enough to keep tabs on Yeni Safak. Just reading this one article was like experiencing a wave of ultra-jingoism. In fact, it's hard to find anything similar to this level of flag-waving ultra-patriotism in the West. Alex Jones comes close, too close, but I haven't heard any mainstream media outlet express anything similar. And in Turkey, Yeni Safak is in the top 10 list of major newspapers. It would be like the Denver Post or Chicago Tribune turning into a mouthpiece for Donald Trump and the U.S. government, with the level of sheer or shrill patriotism never before seen. I mean, when you read this article, you will see the best example of jingoism that I can think of at this moment. But it's a jingoism that is being eaten up by the average Turk. They believe this stuff, and that should give you the shivers. So please, pay attention to the news in the Gog and Magog section about Turkey. You don't need to read everything, but you do need to be aware that Turkey is preparing herself for something big. If you see the parallel with Nazi Germany in the 1930s, I believe that you'd be seeing correctly. Thanks for that awesome contribution, Chris. Very, very well done. The next one, and this one's from David Dubin, the one who really got me thinking about the grand solar minimum this past week. And it's a YouTube video titled, "Who is Watching the Watchers and Fact-Checking the Fact-Checkers?" I've been watching David Dubin for a long time, and it was only after I started watching him that I realized that he's a fellow expat here in Taipei. But like me, he's here in Taipei for different reasons than what he talks about. He does agricultural products in Southeast Asia. I do my best to proclaim the gospel. He's probably better at agricultural products than I am at proclaiming the gospel. But I still try. And it's clear that both David and I have been shaken awake to serious civilization-threatening problems. I see peak energy, financial collapse, and Ezekiel's fire. David sees ecological and agricultural collapse due to a grand solar minimum. Since I do not monitor weather data or solar minimums, I can't independently verify what David is saying. But when you look at the implications, you see starvation, disease, death, scarcity, social upheaval, war, and revolution. And that sounds like the ride of the Four Horsemen of the apocalypse. The current and historical data that David and others present is hard to deny. It's history, and the greatest cataclysms of world history coincide with the change in solar output. Couple that with the collapse in energy availability, and you have a recipe for the worst moment in time since the Great Flood. All of that will set the stage for the coming of the Antichrist. Will you be ready for this? Then, and there's a hint of humor in this one, but I'm also really upset by this. It's from Imgur, and it's titled, "When the Term Madness... If you want to know one big reason why I get upset with flat earthers, it's this. If you believe that the earth is flat, you aren't just a moron, you're also defaming the name of Jesus Christ if you're a Christian." The person who had "Jesus is Lord" on his car, and that's what the link shows, while proclaiming that the earth is flat, which is also shown in the picture, that person is giving direct aid to Satan. If you believe that the earth is flat, get out of my sight. I want to have nothing to do with you. All flat earthers are, whether they know it or not, in league with Satan, and I want nothing to do with people who are in league with Satan. And then someone else, Preppergal, who goes by the name of Preppergal in the comment section, sent me a link, and it's a t-shirt that is a bestseller, and I love it. The link is titled, "Not Flat, We Checked." It has the NASA emblem, but instead of NASA, it says "Not Flat," followed by "We Checked." And I love the fact that it is selling so well. If you believe that the earth is flat, you're a drooling idiot. It doesn't mean that we don't love you. We do. But you're stupid. Seriously, if I have any flat earth readers left that are still flat earthers, stop your madness. We might enjoy laughing at you and using you guys as examples of insanity, but you are blaspheming God. And I do not view blasphemy as anything other than evil. To put it another way, if you believe that the earth is flat, you are a tool of Satan. Anyway, moving on. And this one is, well, I call anti-Semites flat earthers because it's the same kind of mentality. And this one is, well, the title is, "Who Writes This? Who is Dr. Eowyn?" from the Crisis Actors Guild. I just had a wrestling match with someone who calls herself Dr. Eowyn. And she created a neo-Nazi website called Fellowship of the Minds. And I know that some people read this and they think that it's a good website. Well, I'm sorry. It was created by someone who is a neo-Nazi. If you are reading it, you're reading neo-Nazi material. And this Dr. Eowyn is actually someone named Maria Hesea Chang, a demented woman with an obsession about the Lord of the Rings. If you read The Fellowship of the Minds, you are an idiot who is following a demented woman who throws out foolish theories without substance, and her hatred of the Jews is obscene. Maria Hsia Chang is the classic stereotype of the crazy old Chinese woman. You see them here in Taiwan every once in a while, and her profligate insanity is just another example. Never follow or read crazy Chinese old women or crazy old Chinese women. Seriously. Okay, this next one is, well, it's heartbreaking. It's titled UK Discrimination Against Christian Refugees. So, the UK government does its very best to kill Tommy Robinson, and also does its very best to make sure that no Christian refugees enter Britain, ever. All the while, a flood of Muslim refugees enters without problems. And when the hapless Theresa May recognizes that she has a PR problem, she stands up and claims that her government stands with the persecuted Christians. But who does she appoint to make sure that persecuted Christians are granted asylum? Muslims. How utterly insane is this woman? Or are they doing it on purpose? After what they did to Tommy Robinson, I have to assume that the British government is doing all of this on purpose. They just don't like the bad PR. Why doesn't she just convert to Islam and be done with it? Theresa May, just turn 10 Downing Street into a mosque and get it over with. I'm sick of the hypocrisy. And then we have something else further along in madness. South Africa, failed state incoming, on YouTube. This is utterly depressing. It was the African country, South Africa, that had the best chance of becoming the first viable, developed country in Africa. Now it is on course to destroy itself. This is madness. Why did they do this? They had a chance to do so well, and they threw it all away. Never give power to morons. And then there's a list being circulated in the South African government that has 195 farms on it that they want to confiscate from their white African owners. The only question is when these farms will be taken. Well, to turn to another kind of hysterical madness, we have the Boston Globe, U.S. newspapers to run editorial calling for the end to dirty war on the press. This article was written by lying liar Brian Stelter, who Mark Dice rightly lampoons on his videos. The press started this war by lying to us from day one. They have been involved in a war against us, you and me. They were the ones who did this. They started it, and they can stop this war at any time by stopping their attack on the truth. But these people are so full of their own delusions that they are unable to tell the truth because they don't know what the truth could possibly be. And Stelter is such a moron that he can't do anything else but spout utter drivel. And then we move on to another article that along the same lines that has the headline, "Hundreds of U.S. newspapers hit back at Trump. Defend free press." The dirtbags of the U.S. media are upset that they are being accused of corruption. But they are corrupt, and they've been corrupt for over 100 years. And I love the comments that are rolling in attacking these editorials underneath these editorials. It seems that the average American realizes that they are being lied to by the media. That makes me feel better that maybe there is some hope for America. We'll see. And then, to top it off, Bill de Blasio lets security haul away reporter for asking a question. So, the left claim freedom of the press, but they don't want the freedom of the press to ask them difficult questions. Bill Dirtbag de Blasio threw a reporter out who dared to ask him a single question. How does this compare to Donald Trump? When was the last time that Trump threw out a reporter who asked a question? Even when that moron Acosta from CNN, even when he shouted at Trump and acted like an idiot, Acosta wasn't thrown out, even though he deserved to be. But Dirtbag de Blasio? Not so much. Can you see the disgusting double standard? Will you see the dirtbag media report on this? Will the New York Times, Washington Post, or any of the other leftist rags, will they report on this? Of course not. And when we or Trump consider them the enemy of the people, they get upset. Trump is right. The mainstream media are the enemy of the people. They did this to themselves, and I look forward to seeing them falling apart. And may that day come before America falls apart. And then there's something from Dmitry Orlov, from Club Orlov, titled Censoring Alex Jones. Karen J. shared this with me, and Dmitry Orlov is an interesting writer with very, very cogent thoughts on America and the world. And he weighs in on this attack on free speech with this article. Here are just 2 paragraphs that should give you a taste of Orlov's writing. Quote, Jones and I are also different in that he is hugely popular, whereas I am popular enough for me and generally lacking in worldly ambition. I enjoy writing. My readers enjoy what I write, and everyone is happy except the kids, because while I am writing, I am not playing with them. But Jones is becoming huge, popular enough to displace mass media, which is continuously losing mind share. In part, that is its own fault. How do they think that they can go on flogging the dead horses of Russian collusion and Russian meddling before people start shaking their heads and walking away? In part, the verbal diarrhea that we hear on CNN or read in NewYorkTimes.com is intended as a smokescreen because the truth has become toxic to the interests of those who are in charge of mass media in the U.S. I will delve into this subject further on Thursday. The political decision to censor Jones was a sign of desperation. The verbal diarrhea is not working, and so it's for Plan B, which is simply to scream "shut up" as loudly as possible. Due to his huge and burgeoning popularity, which these latest attacks on him have actually served to enhance, Jones is a huge target, whereas I am but a tiny one. Still, first they came for Alex Jones, and then they may very well come for me. And so the time to start paying attention and pushing back is now. These internet entities, Google, Facebook, Apple, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, MailChimp, Discuss, LinkedIn, Flickr, Pinterest, and several others, have no more right to censor him than does your phone company to screen your calls for you or to determine whose number you should be allowed to dial. What was done to Jones was blatantly illegal under both U.S. and international law, and while these companies don't have much to fear in the U.S., where they are politically protected, they have a great deal more to fear internationally. Close quote. Well said, Dmitry. In fact, all the article is worth reading, if nothing else, for his highly ironic style with which he addresses the issue. Thanks, Karen. Appreciate it. This next one is a YouTube video titled Death of a Nation, Dinesh D'Souza and Stefan Molyneux. This is a must-watch, or at least a must-listen video. There are truth bombs in this video that will make any social justice warrior scream in terror. The Democrats are and were the racists, and Dinesh D'Souza lays this out very, very well. And do you remember my point that all racists are socialists? He proved that right here. Democrats are dirtbags and morons. If you know someone who is a Democrat, show them this video. And you'll see a link for it down below in the section, the description for this video. Better yet, take them to D'Souza's movie, Death of a Nation. I am truly amazed at how awful the Democrats are. If you're a Democrat, once you listen to this and watch the movie, Death of a Nation, you would be ashamed to admit to being a Democrat. This next one is, and kind of ironic that it follows the video that I mentioned, How China Captures U.S. Officials, from YouTube. And it's a China uncensored video. Here's an example of just how corrupt Democrats are. Dianne Feinstein has been playing footsie with the Chinese Communist Party for a very, very long time, and she maintained this extremely cozy relationship for decades, even while she was head of the Senate Intelligence Committee. Oh, and Diane's husband made a ton of money in China. And this is only what we see. Generally, we can only see the tip of the iceberg when it comes to corruption. So Dianne Feinstein probably deserves to be tried for treason. The only problem is that we'd have to get the Democrat-controlled FBI and the Democrat-controlled DOJ to try her for treason. Not going to happen, kids. Okay. Then it's Saudi Arabia cuts oil production despite OPEC agreement to hike output. Wait. They're claiming that Saudi Arabia is cutting production because they want the price of oil to be higher? They're claiming that they're doing this all on their own? All by themselves? These analysts and journalists either think that we are morons or it is they who are morons. The reason why Saudi Arabia isn't pumping out more oil is because they can't pump out more oil. At least, not in a reasonable and financially feasible way. Yes, they could technically produce more oil. Anyone can do that. But they can't do that without incurring a financial cost. I include this here because I believe that this is yet another signpost on the way to the realization that we are experiencing right now peak oil. In fact, I believe that peak oil began in 2007. Some will maybe claim that it was 2017, but only if you include shale oil, which is not financially feasible. But moving on. Sweden's government funds anti-Semitism. I first saw this on Zero Hedge, and the comments at the bottom of this article were so horrifying that I had to redouble my efforts to avoid posting Zero Hedge articles. Just the first 50 comments were all neo-Nazi. All of them. It's only when you sorted them so that the newest comments came first that you saw anyone mentioning just how awful the neo-Nazis were in the comment section. There is a murderous, genocidal movement within the right wing that is just as evil as the socialists, and I am shocked at this. Eventually, those of us who aren't hateful will shrink and shrink and shrink until there are few of us left. My hope and prayer is that God will cause these evil people to repent. But if they will not, I pray that God will strike them silent. But in reality, I want God to strike them dead. And I really mean that. The evil is unbearable. But on to the article. Here's the summary. Quote, the municipality of Malmö, which is a town in Sweden, uses taxpayers' money to support Group 194, an organization that posts anti-Semitic images on its Facebook page, such as defamatory cartoon portraying a Jew drinking blood and eating a child. In Sweden, importing Middle Eastern anti-Semitism is funded by taxpayer money, so when scandals occur, they are often addressed by the same people who have participated in spreading its message. No effective actions are currently being taken against the spread of anti-Semitism in Sweden. Think about that. But moving on. Just as European anti-Semitism was defeated by rejecting and condemning the ideology after World War II and isolating its proponents, so must Sweden's new anti-Semitism be defeated by isolating its advocates and marginalizing all organizations spreading its ideas. This means that all direct and indirect government funding of these organizations has to end. As long as this does not happen, Jews in Sweden will continue living in fear and insecurity. Close quote. Not only will the Jews live in fear and insecurity, but I will live in nausea and a desire to beat heads. But that's just me. Anyway, Sweden gave refuge to the Jews that were fleeing the Nazis, and I hope that God will grant Sweden repentance for allowing this evil to proliferate. But they are running out of time and judgment is coming. Now, I've now created a new category in my research section called the War Against Freedom of the War Against Freedom of Speech. It's hard to believe that I need to actually make this a category. But I guess that I need to. I am truly horrified by this concerted attempt by the mainstream media and social media to shut down anyone that disagrees with them. This is sick and twisted, and it's an attempt to limit your ability to obtain the kinds of facts that you need to see the future clearly. And yes, they really do want to control how you think. They don't just want to control what you think. And then I also have not exactly resurrected, but I haven't had as much chance to really talk about the organized rape of children. But there's news in the media, and I won't really talk about it, but that's in the research section. You can go to the article at omegashock.com and read it for yourself. Better yet, subscribe to the shockletter.com and get it in your inbox if that's what you prefer. But we have an organized rape of children. I hope that you will forgive me for wanting these people dead, but with a thorough trial first to establish the facts, then a swift execution. What these foul pedophiles and child rapists have done is beyond description. They deserve to die. And right now, the largest organized pedophile child rape organization in the world is the Roman Catholic Church. We have discovered just recently in I think just a few dioceses, what's the plural for diocese, of the Roman Catholic Church in Pennsylvania, over 1,000 cases, and that's just what's been reported, 1,000 cases of child rape by these pedophile priests. Just one area in one state of the United States. We have these pedophile child rapist priests everywhere in the world. And as far as I'm concerned, when you see a Roman Catholic priest, you need to assume that he's probably a pedophile child rapist before you get proof otherwise, for the safety of your own children. I'm sorry, what the Roman Catholic Church has done is evil. They covered this up, and they kept it quiet, and they made us to believe that their foul and evil priests are safe for your children. They aren't. Please be careful. Well, that's it for this week's Shockcast. I truly hope that you'll be ready for what is coming. A prudent man foreseeth the evil and hideth himself, but the simple pass on and are punished. Proverbs 22:3. If you find a flaw in my reasoning, have a question, or wish to add your own viewpoint, leave a comment on the Omega Shock website or in the comment section below. Omega Shock readers and Shockcast listeners leave awesome comments, and I value each and every one of them. Again, make sure that you are subscribed to the Shock Letter at theshockletter.com. In fact, everyone should sign up for the Shock Letter. It's free. Subscribing and unsubscribing is easy, and there's no way that I would ever share the subscription list with anyone. Period. You have my promise on that. For those of you on YouTube, hit the subscribe button and click the bell to get the notifications. You'll see that below. And if you liked this video, give it a thumbs up. All of that helps you and me get the message out. And so, allow me to close with a blessing and improve my Hebrew from Numbers 6, verses 24 to 26. Yevarechecha Yehovah Yeshmirecha. Ya'er Yehovah Panav Elecha V'yichu Necha. Yisa Yehovah Panav Elecha V'yisa Lecha Shalom. The Lord bless thee and keep thee. The Lord make his face shine upon thee and be gracious unto thee. The Lord lift up his countenance upon thee and give thee peace. Numbers 6, 24 to 26. May your pastor give you the words that you need to continue walking the path that God calls you to follow. And Lord willing, I will see all of you next week.